Somewhere in Japan, there's a horror story going around in an unnamed city. A rumor of a little girl who stalks the streets. A ghost girl who terrorizes people with her frightening appearance. Afterwards, a member of the girl's family would visit the victim or the victim's family to apologize. The older brother, hounding the family when apologizing over and over for the actions of his sister. Mysteriously, for reasons unknown, the victims end up disappearing, leaving behind nothing but stains and the rancid odor of death. And yes, this is starting to become a popular horror story. Possibly because of a few survivors who are able to connect a pair of siblings to the mysterious dissolving incidents that are spreading throughout several countries in Japan. Unfortunately, not enough for the authorities to find the siblings as suspects to these disappearances, mostly because of how the witnesses claim that the disappearances were supernatural. But for today's story, the mystery of the siblings being connected to the disappearances are nothing but a mere rumor. A popular ghost story that's about to take an interesting turn because of a shocking event, when a force of evil comes across the experiences of love. Chizumi Aziri is a child of evil. She relishes in seeing people suffer. Much like her older brother, she too has an inner craving that drives her into terrorizing innocent people on the streets. And she finds it beautiful how her pitiful brother would step in and work his wonders. And that is when things get really interesting, creating a horror story that comes with greasy, tasty brains. But when noticing a boy a couple days ago during one of her campaigns, who's a bit older, well, that was when Chizumi began experiencing these strange feelings for the boy. For quite some time, she'd been stalking the boy when he would walk home from school. But for today, Chizumi just had to give this cute boy an introduction. Chizumi found it exciting when watching the boy act like a prey running from a predator. Catching him wasn't hard for Chizumi when she pounced on the child, pinning down the terrified boy while she laughed, enjoying his cries for help, tasting the cute boy, maybe having a little bite, not knowing nor caring that her older brother Yuma reluctantly looks upon this horrible scene from a distance, despising his sister for everything she's done, the people she tormented, and how far she's willing to go with this campaign of hers when setting her sights on a child. After the horrible incident, Yuma just could not bear any more of Chizumi's carelessness. All the people she hounded in the streets, forcing her older brother to clean up her mess. It's because of her they had to move from several cities. All those kind people who suffered because of his power and her deviant ways to feed her craving. And now, Yuma has no choice but to make an innocent child suffer. But then again, is it not true that Yuma gets his kicks from apologizing to the demon when going around begging forgiveness? And that's the thing about Yuma. His connection with the demon is truly powerful, and as much exhilaration he gains from seeking forgiveness, there's nothing more in the world he despises than the results of his power in connection with the demon, something that Chizumi doesn't care about, which is why Yuma feels that there is no other option but to seek forgiveness from Chizumi, and watching her brother on his knees, begging forgiveness, was something that Chizumi found to be hilarious. Her pathetic brother trying to kill his sister, his own flesh and blood, because of how he has no spine. Maybe if Yuma wasn't so stupid, he would have known that using his power on her just makes her stronger. This whole time, he never noticed how she didn't melt like the other victims. In fact, Yuma using the power kinda gives her a craving for melted brains, which is why Chizumi just can't wait for another bottle of melted stuff when getting home. And that was when Yuma immediately began strangling his sister, the troublemaker, the little monster, the deaths of all those people, his life being so messed up, All of this was because of Chizumi, and watching his sister being deprived from oxygen, her life fading away. After everything, Yuma was convinced that this would make the horror go away, because it's a fact that the world would be better off if Chizumi was dead. And when Chizumi's nails dug into the flesh of Yuma's arms, letting go of his sister because of the deep scratches, that was when Yuma noticed something different with Chizumi. If Yuma didn't know any better, he could swear that his sister is awfully happy. Something happened. Something nice. Maybe it was because of that boy, that Chizumi was in love. Tomohito was still in shock from what had happened. The terrible things that girl did to him. And even though he was in tears, he did not want his mother and father finding out what happened. But when reaching home, Tomohito would find himself being struck by fear when his concerned mother had already known what happened, because of how a young man came by earlier and apologized for his sister's actions. Even though Tomohito's parents were deeply concerned with their son, they've decided not to call the authorities. The girl was just a child, and they kind of felt bad for the brother because of his genuine apologies and humble appearance. But Tomohito was still a child that was deeply terrified. Obviously, his parents didn't believe him when he tried telling them about the rumors going around, how people go missing because of a pair of siblings. That night, Tomohito did not sleep well because of the fear and the horrors that may come. The following morning was not that easy for Tomohito. Thankfully, his parents decided to let him stay home from school so he can get some rest, to feel better. But terror would haunt Tomohito once again when overhearing his mother speaking to somebody at the door. Somebody who was desperately apologizing for the actions of his sister and frustrating his mother when demanding to know where the stranger lived. It was him, the guy who goes around apologizing to his victims before they go missing. And when Tomohito went downstairs after hearing his mother shut the door, seeing his mother just standing there, facing the door, kinda acting strange when mentioning how the boy was not only weird, but very attractive. This had made Tomohito feel very uncomfortable. The whole day, Tomohito's parents had this bizarre, uplifting behavior. Rather than expressing concern that all day they were being visited by that guy who keeps apologizing, it was like they didn't seem to care. In fact, they kinda liked the good-looking boy visiting them. And when Tomohito began noticing the pus coming from the noses of his parents, laughing hysterically as the disgusting liquids began pouring from the eyes and mouth, giving off this foul stench, that was when the boy panicked and began rushing outside to call for a doctor. Knowing that the lives of his parents were on the line, Tomohito was desperate to find help. Nothing was going to stop him. Until he came across her, that girl from yesterday. It was like she was literally waiting for Tomohito. Now with the fear of losing his parents and being chased by a creepy girl, this had driven the boy into a panic frenzy. Thankfully, Tomohito was able to find somebody, a guy who was just walking down the street. And after telling the random stranger about his parents and the terrifying girl that was chasing him, that was when the kind stranger decided to help Tomohito by taking him to his house, which was secluded and on the outskirts of the city, a perfect place where Tomohito can hide and use the phone. Maybe it was because of the terrifying experience of watching his parents being melted, the ghost girl hunting him down. Or maybe it was because of how Tomohito felt that this stranger was no threat when deciding to enter his home, even though the stranger gave Tomohito nothing but hospitality, offering him shelter to ease down his fears with a cup of coffee before calling the ambulance and authorities. There was something about this place and the kind stranger that made Tomohito feel like there was something not right. Maybe it was because of how the place had no furnishings of any kind, like the home was being inhabited by a squatter. or maybe the familiar stench that lingered in the air. Either way, Tomohito just could not shake away that terrible feeling that something horrible was going to happen. And after properly introducing himself as Yuma Aziri, Tomohito would finally understand the horror within this house when Yuma would proudly introduce his little sister, Chizumi, who happens to be in love with the terrified child. When seeing the ghost girl wearing hideous makeup with that unearthly face, Tomohito immediately panicked with fear and tried to escape, which went with no success because of her brother Yuma. Supposedly, Yuma did not want this to happen, having to go so far as kidnapping a child, but he could not ignore the fact that his sister was truly happy. She was in love. Yuma believed that Tomohito may be the answer to have Chizumi turn a new leaf, to end her terrible ways, if the boy could love her back. But there was no way Tomohito would love something like Chizumi, and watching the boy scream in terror, being held against his will, was becoming too much for Yuma. There was nothing that Yuma wanted more than to bring an end to this madness, to apologize for what happened to the boy's parents, seek forgiveness for kidnapping him, and the horrible things that are about to come. Unfortunately, Yuma was denied his opportunity to seek forgiveness because of Chizumi. Oh no, Tomohito was now hers, and she can't have her stupid brother take away something that she truly loves. He'll definitely regret it. A lick, a suck, even a bite. For once in her miserable life, Chizumi was truly happy. The cute boy she'd fallen for a few days ago, and now he was all hers, and she was going to enjoy every minute of tasting and biting the cute boy. And with Yuma sitting there, reluctantly watching the horror show, Chizumi found it hilarious when her brother tried explaining his sister and her evil ways, how she was born from the devil and her mother, acting like he can't stomach Chizumi's ways of expressing her love. Coming from a guy who's in bed with the devil? Lies. Yuma Aziri is truly the master of lies. And Chizumi can never get over the fact of how many people were stupid enough to believe his nonsense because of his pitiful act. But not Tomohito. No way Chizumi would have her precious Tomohito fall for her brother's stupid lies. Which is why she showed the boy Yuma's proud collection of bottles, each one with names taped on them. And inside them bottles are the remains of people who were melted by her brother. Of course, he likes to say that he keeps the bottles because of his sister Chizumi, how she likes the taste of rancid human grease and brains, which is true. But when trying to have a taste of Miss Agawara, an old hag that Yuma favored because of her kindness, just watching Yuma desperately reach for the bottle from his sister's hands, trying to spare the fleshy remains of Miss Agawara from being consumed by Chizumi, one can easily tell that her brother is a liar. There was no way Chizumi's love would be like the others, stupid enough to believe Yuma's lies. And watching the siblings fight over the bottle, while having some of the liquid contents splashed near him, the boy who's being forced into this overwhelming terror, it was too much for Tomohito, and that was when the child fainted. Tomohito did not know how long he was kept in that house. The child was weak, and he was growing weaker. The horror was too much for Tomohito, fully accepting the reality that his chances of escape was hopeless, which is why the boy stopped fighting to free himself, stopped screaming for help. Basically, Tomohito had nothing but the hopes of his parents being alive, seeking help for their missing son, trying to free his mind from the images of their faces melting. It's been a couple days already, and yet there was nothing left within the child. Every now and then the ghost girl, Chizumi, would have her way with Tomohito and the boy didn't fight nor cry. Sometimes Yuma would check in on Tomohito, making sure he was fed, still alive. He looked sorry for what had become of the boy. Then he felt bad over the things that his sister was doing to him, and would leave without saying a word. Tomohito knew that this Yuma was not really sorry. It was just an act. A good one. If the guy was really sorry, he would have let him go by now. Eventually, Tomohito believed that he was losing his sanity when he began hearing voices. Faint voices that expressed pity for him, not knowing where they were coming from. Not that it mattered. Maybe it was Tomohito losing his touch with reality. But there was something happening, my friends. Something within this house that was taking pity on the boy. The remains of human souls who had fallen victim to an evil, their bodies melted because of a power that was bestowed upon a young man. Not knowing that their souls were still intact when collecting their fleshy remains with bottles, depriving them from fully dissolving like the others. These souls, tormented by this hellish nightmare, hoping that their remains wouldn't be consumed by that demonic child. But to see this poor boy suffering, his life fading away, and at risk of being melted like the others, facing the same torment like them, that was when the captured souls would muster enough strength to free themselves from their bottled prisons, push their liquid remains to the boy, dousing him with their grease, so the boy can free himself from his binds, without questioning the faint voices that were telling Tomohito to quickly and quietly free himself. Tomohito was finally able to free his hands and feet, and immediately left the house, running like he was being chased, as if his life was on the line. When the authorities was approached by a child who was kidnapped by a pair of siblings, immediately there was an investigation. Unfortunately, the boy's parents were gone, nothing left but stains. When visiting the location where the boy was taken, the suspects Yuma and Chizumi Azuri were nowhere to be found. Nothing left but stains and the smell of something rancid. It was like the two had just disappeared off the face of the earth. Tomohito was brought to an orphanage, seeking treatment for what he went through, even though the authorities felt that there was not enough to connect the siblings to the growing number of dissolving incidents, but were suspects to a kidnapping. However, it was the media that was taking a great deal of interest with a pair of siblings. Because of Yuma and Chizumi, Japan is in a state of fear. It would be through the actions of a single reporter who will force the siblings from the shadows and stand before the country and its people within an exclusive interview.